Namaste, I'm Manju Kak. Welcome to the second session of our 6-weekly workshop on Pakistan occupied territories of India, organized by Jammu Kashmir Study Center. JK Study Center is a think tank dedicated to the academic study and dissemination of facts on Jammu and Kashmir. The workshop is conducted by Mr. Alok Bansal, who is the director of India Foundation, a geopolitical expert with special focus on occupied territories of India, and the author of various books on the region, including Gilgit-Baltistan and the Saga of Human Rights Violation, and the occupied territories of Bharat. A nation loses its territory not when it is occupied, but when it is forgotten. This is the thought that Alokji left us with last week. And how pertinent is that? In fact, this workshop is an effort to revisit and rethink about the lost lands. Last week, we had an illuminating introduction to the region. Some of the salient features included that were covered were differences between the territories under the occupation of Pakistan in terms of geography, population, demography, political developments, and the administrative structures. A lot of discussion followed around the cultural and the linguistic linkages with India and the varied languages spoken in the region. Needless to say, last week's session has definitely generated an interest to know more. So today we continue our discussion with Alokji, who's taken out his valuable time for deepening our understanding about the region, and we're really thankful to him. Alokji will be taking us through Mirpur-Muzaffarabad regions and also explain the myth surrounding the name Azad Jammu Kashmir, as labeled by Pakistan. This region, which was home to the oldest university called Sharda Peeth, the seat of Mata Saraswati built by Kushans in the 1st century, now serves as the base camp for the radical outfits, including various anti-India organizations under Pakistani occupation. The region has less than 5% of population who speak Kashmiri. Well, isn't that very intriguing? Let's understand more about it in this today's session. But before I invite Alokji to take over, I wanted to reiterate some housekeeping rules. We would request all the participants to keep their video on throughout the session and rename themselves with their full name if they haven't already done so. Due to the gravity of the topic in hand, we request you all to comply with this. Otherwise, we'll be compelled to remove you from the session. Please note that this session is being recorded, assuming everyone is okay with it. Everyone will be muted during Alokji's talk, but there'll be an interactive Q&A session later. If anyone has any questions, you can either enter it in the Zoom chat box or click a raise your hand icon on the Zoom call. We'll get back to you. We hope to address as many questions today as possible. I would now like to invite Alokji to take over. Thank you.
Thank you, Manjuji, I think, for this liberal introduction. Today, we are going to have the second of our talks that we are going to have in this series. And the title for today's talk is Mirpur-Muzaffarabad, the myth of AJK. And as I had promised last time, today's talk should be as brief as possible so that we have enough time for interaction with all of you. Now, this photo that you are seeing is of Sharda Peeth, actually, the ruins of Sharda Peeth as they exist today. I'll come to it subsequently. But what I wanted to tell you that this is the region which Pakistan calls as Azad Jammu and Kashmir and proclaims to the world that this is an independent entity. Now, there could be nothing more dubious or nothing more mythical than saying that this territory, which is virtually under the firm grip of Pakistan, is actually independent or autonomous for that matter. And this I will come to as we move forward. And this is what I was trying to say. And as we move, let's have an idea. This particular area is called, as I said, Azad Jammu and Kashmir by Pakistan. Till 5th August 2019, we did not have an official name for this particular area. because POJK actually included the entire territory and we did not have a specific name for this area. And as a result, JKSC had coined the term Mirpur-Muzaffarabad, which we have been using to call this area as to distinguish it from Gilgit-Baltistan. It's presently divided into 3 divisions, that is Muzaffarabad, Rawalakot or Poonch, and Mirpur. Muzaffarabad division comprises of Muzaffarabad, Hattiyan and Neelam districts of Kashmir, and Poonch division consists of Bagh, Poonch, Haveli and Sudnauti districts. Mirpur division comprises of Mirpur, Kotli and Bhimbar of Jammu. Pakistanis cannot legally become citizens of this geographical territory, but we will see as we move ahead that many of them do manage to creep in and occupy this territory. The first thing which you need to see is Mangala Dam. And why Mangala Dam? Because it has a direct bearing of this issue as far as Jammu Kashmir, JKSC in UK is concerned. We need to understand this Mangala Dam was built in this territory of Mirpur-Muzaffarabad primarily to irrigate lands in Pakistan. Now, because of this particular dam, a whole city called city of Mirpur, which was a thriving city, was submerged. And now the bulk of the diaspora that you see in UK, including Lord Nazir, are actually Mirpuris. And why Mirpuris have come to UK, we need to understand this. That between First World War and Second World War, most of the people from Mirpuri worked as stokers into the steamships. Stokers were the people who would actually lift up coal and put it into the furnace. And these people had traveled far and wide, and some of them actually settled in UK. But after the Second World War, when Mirpur city went under, was submerged under Mangala Dam, and people were given a compensation, and a new city was created called New Mirpur. People had no cultural linkages, and slowly people migrated to UK. And one of the reasons why these people migrated is because of this Mangala Dam. But this Mangala Dam itself is a saga of exploitation of this territory. Because you see, inundation has taken place in Kashmiri territory, that is Jammu and Kashmir's territory. But irrigation is to Pakistan, because water always flows downstream and the water is available to Pakistan for irrigating. The power generated is also available to Pakistan. So this, I just thought we'll start with this particular picture. And then another picture, as I said last time, a picture is worth 1,000 words, just to give you how the terrain is, how picturesque some of the parts of this particular area is. Now, this is roughly the map. It has a facade of independence. As I said, it has a prime minister, it has a president. But what is more important is that it has an assembly, which has a 45 directly elected and 8 indirectly elected members in assembly. Now, what is important is that of these 45 directly elected members, only 33 are elected from this region. That is Mirpur-Muzaffarabad. What is interesting is that the 6 seats have been reserved for people who have migrated from Anantnag, Baramulla or Muzaffarabad districts as on 14th August 1947. They may be living anywhere in Pakistan. They may be living in Karachi, and there are of course division of it, like 2 seats for these refugees living in Karachi, 1 seat for people living in Sindh, 1 seat in Punjab. This has been divided. These are basically for the Kashmir region, the people who have actually migrated. There are 6 seats for migrants from Jammu, Kathua, Riyasi, Udhampur, Poonch and Mirpur districts, as well as Mangala Dam evacuees. They could be living again anywhere in Pakistan, and there are seats for them in this assembly. Now, this is very, very important, because what has happened is that we have, in India, we have not created a similar situation, because we have large number of POJ people who were displaced from POJK living in different parts. We could have also given them a system whereby they could be represented into the assembly directly. Now, what is more important is of the 8 indirectly elected seats, 5 are for ladies. This is the process which is everywhere in Pakistan, like all assemblies have certain reserved seats for ladies. These are indirectly elected. There is 1 seat for ulema, one for technocrat, and one for people abroad. So a Mirpuri living in UK can also be a member of this so-called Assembly of Azad, so-called Azad Jammu Kashmir or Mirpur-Muzaffarabad. It also has its higher judiciary. It has a high court, it has a Supreme Court. So as I said, it has all the facade. Pakistan passed a 13th amendment, which has further increased Islamabad's control over the region. In fact, virtually anything and everything that has to be done with this particular region now is under the control of Jammu Kashmir Council, which controls it. This is again a picture which I had, I think, shown. These are the administrative divisions, and you can see the map of the districts as they exist today. You can see the various districts as they are showing, and their territory, area, population, etc. These are the headquarters, like where the headquarter is located. As I said, bulk of this region is actually Jammu. Very little is what you could call it as Kashmir or something like that. And that's one of the reasons why most of the people speak other languages rather than Kashmiri. This is the capital now, Muzaffarabad. Initially, the capital was at a place called Palandari, which is in Sudhanoti district. But subsequently, the capital of this territory was shifted to Muzaffarabad. And this is the famous bend that you see in Muzaffarabad, which is actually a identifying feature. This is again a bridge just to give you an idea. These are the languages which are spoken in Mirpur-Muzaffarabad. Bulk of the people speak Pahadi Potwari languages. And this is what we need to understand, that almost 68% of the population speaks these languages. Of course, there are different versions of it. In fact, different colloquial versions, Mirpuri, Pahadi, Potwari, but they all belong to a particular group. In terms of single largest spoken language, I think Gurjari or Gojri is spoken the most, which is 19%. And then you have, of course, small population speaking Hindko, which is spoken in parts of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province, especially in Hazara division of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province, in Abbottabad, Haripur, Manshera, etc. in Pakistan. And then Kashmiri is spoken by a very, very small percent. As I said, less than 5% of the population. Sheena is spoken in the northern areas, close to Gilgit-Baltistan. There are one or two villages where some people speak Pashto. And what is very important is that there is some speakers of Dogri also in Bhimbar, etc. But what is important is that there is a language called Kundal Shahi, which is confined to one singular village, and the only language which is not found anywhere outside. So this is spoken in that particular territory alone. So this is where this particular languages are concerned, I thought must be very important. Another major important factor is religion in Mirpur-Muzaffarabad. According to the official figures, they say almost everybody is Muslim in this particular area. But it's not true. There are minorities in this particular region. Though they say 10% population is Muslim, it's not so. Amongst Muslims, an overwhelming majority is of Sunnis. Virtually almost all are Sunnis, adhering to Hanafi school of jurisprudence. Now, of late, what we are seeing is the rising radicalization. Salafism is making deep inroads. There is a very, very insignificant number of Shias and Ismailis because there is a Jamaat Khana which has been established. So obviously, there is a small community of Ismailis. There are a very small number of Shias. The second largest sect of Islam which was existing in this area was of Ahmadiyas. There are about 25,000 plus Ahmadiyas in this region who were considered as Muslims till 2018. Now, this is very important that unlike Pakistan, which had declared them non-Muslims in 70s, this territory continued to accept them as Muslims, and as a result, you found that the Ahmadiyas thrived here. They dominated a lot of important positions, etc. But in 2018, they passed a constitutional amendment and have declared Ahmadiyas as non-Muslims. And since then, we are seeing persecution of Ahmadiyas. They are in significant number, especially in the Jammu part, that is the lower areas in Bimbar, Kotli, etc., where you have a large number of Ahmadiyas. There are about 5,000 Christians which are inhabiting the region also. Most of them are in Bimbar, and many of them have been actually given the jobs. Some of them, they're jobless. Some of them have been provided as sanitation workers. And there is, of course, a plight of these Christians which has been highlighted by various articles. There is a lady who is actually MA in English literature called Sonia Riyasat, but she has been forced to work as menial labor, and her story has been making rounds. They have been protesting, asking that they should be allowed. There are, of course, a few families of Baha'is. These Baha'is have been living there pre-1947. Official statistics says there are only 6 families in Muzaffarabad, but actually there are many more families of Baha'is living there. There is also a Baha'i graveyard. Unfortunately, no Hindu or Sikh resides in the region since 1965, a region which was thriving with Hindus and Sikhs till 1947. There was almost 30% population of Hindus and Sikhs in this particular region. But after 1965, there has been no Hindu or Sikh. In fact, immediately after the partition, 48, 49, there were hardly any Hindu Sikhs, but there were 1 or 2 Hindu or Sikhs who continued in the region till 1965, who have since either migrated, killed, or converted. That's been the case with these minorities in this particular part. Now, before I come to the this particular, I wanted to talk about our shrines in this particular part. I just want to break this myth of how this area is termed by Pakistan as so-called autonomous or independent. Please understand, in 1949, a Karachi agreement was signed, which was signed by a political party called Muslim Conference and then Prime Minister of Pakistan, Mr. Liaquat Ali Khan. According to this agreement which they signed, they removed firstly Gilgit-Baltistan and established an administration in this particular part. Subsequently, in 1950, a president was appointed. And that president was appointed not by any elections or something. He was appointed by a political party called Muslim Conference. And he was subservient to the head of the so-called Azad Kashmir movement. And the party had a supreme head who was actually even above the president. And it continued like this for a number of years. When Field Marshal Ayub Khan captured power in Pakistan and he dismissed the constitution and brought in a basic democracy framework, the same basic democracy framework was again shifted to this particular part, Mirpur-Muzaffarabad. And so where was the independence? Where was the autonomy? Whatever happened in Pakistan happened here. In 1970, there was an act passed which for the first time made a provision for a directly elected president. However, this particular president was required to take an oath affirming the allegiance of POJK to Pakistan, that is, AJK is part of Pakistan, and then only he could take over office. And then, of course, in 74, a parliamentary democracy was ushered in. However, you can see how autonomous or how independent it is that in 1975, Minister Bhutto was the Prime Minister of Pakistan. Sardar Muhammad Ayub Khan was the president of this so-called AJK. He was suddenly arrested by an officer of Pakistan's Federal Security Force in the capital from his official residence and subsequently dismissed. He was put in jail thereafter. Thereafter, when Zia captured power, he actually set up military advisor. So what we see is that irrespective of this facade, which they say that there is area is independent, sovereign or something, this area has been governed by the people from Pakistan, depending on whoever is in power. So whenever there has been a, like when Pervez Musharraf captured power, he brought in his own Major General as president of AJK. So this has been going on. And then, of course, the 13th Amendment, which continued, which has actually made even, which was passed in 31st May 2018, has actually further strengthened Islamabad's hold over this particular region, because all major decisions have been handed over to Jammu and Kashmir Council, which is headed by the Prime Minister of Pakistan rather than the so-called President of AJK. So this myth has been actually broken. We need to understand that a junior official in the Ministry of Kashmir Affairs and Northern Areas actually lords over the so-called President and Prime Minister of this particular territory. Now, I just wanted to discuss about these shrines. We have a large number of shrines in this particular territory. As I said, this area was full of Hindus and Sikhs before 47, and there were many shrines. But most important, of course, has been the Sharda Peeth, which was, of course, a very, very valuable known sites of learning. It was, of course, one of the 18th Mahashakti Peeths. But more importantly, if you actually remember the time of Adi Shankara, the Adi Shankara was actually brought to Sharda, where he actually, when the priests from Sharda Peeth actually recognized him, then only he was considered as a Jagat Guru or the thing. If you actually look up to the people who visited India, you read Al-Biruni, he said that Banaras and Kashmir are the great centers of Hindu science. And he was talking of Sharda Peeth, the shrine of goddess Sharda. So this was actually a very, very important shrine, and large number of foreign visitors have actually talked of the shrine. In fact, account says the shrine of Sharda is situated in the Kerem Krishna Ganga valley at a hillock across the Kishan Ganga river on the bank of Madhumati, which joins it near the shrine. Surrounded by snow-capped mountains and dense forests, it commands a panoramic view. This is one of the accounts which is written from the colonial time about the Sharda Peeth. This was a huge, imposing structure. In fact, during Kanishka's time, Sharda was the largest academic institution in this part of the world. People from Central Asia and different areas used to come. There were Buddhist scholars, there were Hindu scholars, there were Jain scholars. So there are numerous references to Sharda from Nilmat Quran onwards, that you get so many references of this particular area. And the first verse of Prapansar, composed by Adi Shankaracharya, is devoted to the praise of Sharda. Now, this particular shrine has been neglected. As you know, in 1947, Swami Nandalalji, who was the priest of Sharda Peeth, carried idols from Sharda Peeth to Kupwara, and these have actually been housed in Devibal in Baramulla, and some. Now, another shrine is being constructed just across the line of control, so that till we manage to regain this structure and this territory, we can have something. So there are large number of other gurudwaras and temples which are there. When you see that water in Mangala Dam dips from the old Mirpur cities, you can see a many Shivala temples and Banganga temples, and their domes are very clearly seen when the flagstaff and all is seen when the water level falls. There were other temples in different other areas. Many of them have been lying in disuse. Some of them have been reappropriated by the authorities there, like Ali Beg Gurdwara is being used as a school for girls. So there are a lot of issues, and I think this is one of the issues which has been taken up, that a corridor, at least like Kartarpur, should be created for Sharda Peeth also, at least till this issue or problem gets resolved. These are some of the protests, just to show that the protests are not only confined to Gilgit-Baltistan. Even in Mirpur-Muzaffarabad, people have been protesting, and they have been saying that this artificial division that has been created, where Gilgit-Baltistan has been removed from them, should not be done. And they have been marching up to UN MOGIP and UN observers and asking them that this should be done. These are again some protests you can see. These are the pictures of that. You can see the name Kashi Traders. This is actually, Kashgar was also known as Kashi, as you know, and most of the people from this part put trade with that part of the world. This was the first time when they made this slogan, "Ye jo dahshat gardi hai, uske piche vardi hai," directly accusing Pakistan Army of terrorism. Because what has happened is Pakistan Army has set up large number of camps in this particular territory of these non-state actors like Lashkar-e-Toiba, Jaish-e-Mohammed, etc. And these are all hardcore radical Islamists who have actually brought in terrorism into this particular area. And there are, of course, when the Indian Army attacks these shrines, many of these people have been affected. So they have been saying that this is the army which is actually doing all this, and that needs to be removed. We had elections in this particular part, in July 2021 for this particular elections, so-called AJK Council. And this we need to understand that, again, as I said, 33 seats were here and 12 were outside. And as I said, whoever wins in rest of Pakistan generally wins. 2021 PTI was the ruling party there, so it emerged as the ruling party, and it won 26 seats with 3 women seats and 3 others, and they have 32 seats, which is a clear majority. PPP won these seats, 11, 1 woman, and Muslim Conference and JK People's Party won 1 seat each. The voter turnout was 61.3%. And at the moment, the political party which is ruling this dispensation actually belongs to Imran Khan's supporter. Of course, there is an attempt being now done to remove him from power and do that. So this in sum total is just the gist as far as this particular territory is concerned. I did not wish to talk much because I thought it will be better if you have any questions which I may try to answer, though I may not have all your answers, but I'll try and answer to the extent it is feasible. And once again, I will again reiterate what I had said last time, that a nation loses its territory not when it is occupied, but when it is forgotten. And there are a number of books, of course, some of them, of course, I have had the privilege of contributing, but there are many of these books. Some of these books will probably enlighten you about this area if you so desire to know. With that, I will wind, and I think, as I said, today we would have as much sharing as is possible, interacting with all of you. If you have questions, answers, etc., we would take it on from here. Thank you so much.
So thank you, Alok ji, once again. You mentioned about, the people being against the hand of the, Pakistan and this facade of entire. But at the same time, you mentioned also about the voter turnout in 21 being 61%. So how is it that people are still, going out and voting, and even if they are against the entire, setup?
See, as I had said, if you remember my last lecture, I had said that the opposition to Pakistani occupation is not so strong in Mirpur-Muzaffarabad as it is in Gilgit-Baltistan. But what I was trying to show that even in Mirpur-Muzaffarabad, which has been culturally assimilated by Pakistan to a very great extent, there is opposition. There is a significant section of the population which opposes. Second thing is, whenever you have an election, you need to understand that people, even if they oppose a particular system or government, like to vote because as long as some sort of an administration is there, they want to have a stake. They want that their stakeholders are ruling. Then there are, of course, issues of community, because this area is again ethnically divided. There are different biradaris, as they call them, and people vote for if the candidate from the biradari, etc., is contesting the contest. But as I said very clearly, that in Mirpur-Muzaffarabad, the opposition to that extent is not there. As I said again, one of the major source of revenue for this part is that you get a lot of remittances. You have a huge Mirpuri diaspora in UK, which is actually in the forefront of talking about so-called issues of Jammu and Kashmir. In fact, globally, it is the Mirpuri diaspora in UK which is in the forefront. And people like Lord Nazir and others are the ones who keep raising this issue on and off. Though they have their own dubious backgrounds, but they have actually been in the forefront. And I think that's what I was trying to say, that people here, even in this area, which Pakistan claims to have assimilated, there is opposition. The people have the guts to come out openly and protest against the Pakistan army and Pakistan's occupation. That's what it is.
So if I may have a quick follow-up on that.
Sure.
Are the people now, trying to get any international support or maybe even Indian support to, de-establish this entire setup, or, towards their ask of integrating Gilgit-Baltistan?
See, as far as Mirpur-Muzaffarabad is concerned, there are people like Shabir Chaudhary, etc., who are actually protesting against Pakistan's occupation. They are, of course, abroad. Living in that area and making this protest is difficult, but you see people are doing it because this area is virtually controlled by Pakistan army and ISI, which has, in fact, if you are close to the line of control, you can't even move around without actually informing Pakistan army. You can't leave your villages, you can't move around. That sort of restriction is there. So, of course, for people to seek India's support or want to come to India or request, we have to reach out. And that's where I said, it is not only you don't have to forget it, you have to reach out, and you can't only be reaching out to the land without reaching out to the people, because this is an inhabited land. So you not only need to know the geography, you also need to know the demographics, you also need to know the people, and you have to reach out to them. That's what is important as far as this particular area is.
Thank you, Alok ji. I am IK Pandit. I am a Kashmiri Pandit. I believe that the development of this area is much worse compared to our Kashmir. So with that pretext, are we not able to sort of mobilize those people, make sure that they understand the development of the Kashmir, which is with us, that makes people sort of live a very better life, live a very healthy life? Is it not a context which India should always sort of take it on to them, and then through that sort of mobilize whatever anti-Pakistan or sort of pro-India, what you call, I will not call this as propaganda, but sentiment, we should not take it forward in that light. Is that true? First, if yes, then why India cannot sort of take that context and then see what can be done?
See, regrettably, Government of India's policies vis-a-vis this territory for first 5 decades of India's existence or even more have been seriously flawed. Let me be very honest with you. We have really not taken that sort of proactive stance that we needed to take as far as these territories were concerned. We hardly protested when Mangala Dam was built. It was just a token protest sort of a thing. In fact, in between, there was a time when World Bank funded some of the projects in this particular territory. We did not object to that. 2007, there was a Baroness Emma Nicholson report, I think 2007 or 2009, which is a very, very clear articulation. See, we are not saying Baroness Emma Nicholson, European Parliament MEP, she wrote a very wonderful report where she has written very clearly that Jammu and Kashmir is far, far better and far more rights people have than people in occupied territories. So that's been very clearly highlighted by a neutral third-party report. So what has happened is, yes, last at least 8-10 years plus, maybe you can say 20 years, we have been trying, we have now started talking about this region. Had been actually gone away from our mental space. We are trying to highlight first. The first process is we need to understand what this region is. As of now, people, I think many Kashmiris had also started forgetting this region. Rest of India was also very, very ignorant. So we are now trying to bring it back into your consciousness. And now we need to do a concerted campaign. Now we are trying to do things. We are raising these issues, but we need to do much more. As I said, we need to do much more. We need to highlight these facts. What are the rights enjoyed by citizens of India who are living in Kashmir vis-a-vis people who are in occupied territories? We should also say what are how much the development has taken place, what is the cost of living, what is the per capita income, and things like that, which can easily be shown and projected. We need to do that, and I think this workshop is a step in that direction, primarily to tell people how we are much better off than the people who are living in that part.
Yeah, thank you. So, Alokji, I have one question. So Mirpuris you mentioned and described about them, but can you tell us a bit more about their ethnicity, language, and how truly they represent that area and other ethnic groups, or do they have a disproportionate hegemony over the whole, the narrative that they are peddling all over the world on the region?
See, as I said, Mirpuri is people who lived in Mirpur, and Mirpur was a big town even in the before 47. And as I said, we need to understand the people here speak Mirpuri dialect, which is actually a dialect of a Pahadi Potwadi group of languages. And the unique thing was that this part of the people region, Mirpuri region, had a lot of people working on ships, steamships, when the steamships used to ply across the oceans. And as I said, all steamships had a requirement of a person who had to manually use a shovel to lift up the coal and put it into the furnace. And they were stokers, they were called stokers. And large number of stokers virtually were from Mirpur because rightly or wrongly, there was at that point of time a certain amount of taboo that was associated in the Hindu faith with going across the oceans. So, the Mirpuris were enterprising, they took up this task and they continued. And when you go across the ocean, some of them managed to stay there because you are exposed to the outside world. You see the world outside. Some of them stayed in Britain. Britain was the ruling at those days. There was no restriction. You could have actually gone from India if you had the money and wherewithal, you could have gone and stayed in UK. So some of them stayed there. So this number was there. It was a small number. But what happened? But after independence, when the war happened in 47, 48, the Kashmir war continued for a very long period of time. Large number of people migrated because there was turbulence. People who had some amount of money migrated. Then next migration took place when Mangala Dam was built, because that actually inundated their land, traditional land, because a person has a longing and attachment with the land where he has been living. He has some attachment to the home where his ancestors lived, the land which he plowed. But when all this went underwater and he was given an alternate plot of land somewhere outside, he had no attachment with that. And they had the money and they already had relatives in UK. So many of them slowly gravitated and moved. Now this Mirpuri diaspora is a powerful tool as far as overseas Kashmiris are concerned, and they have been in the forefront of anti-India protests as far as UK is concerned. They are not so very important or influential inside Mirpur-Muzaffarabad, but yes, outside they are a very visible sign. In fact, you see people, all the protests that you see in UK are by and large led by the Mirpuri diaspora, which is there in numbers. And that's why, since they have large numbers, you have people like Lord Nazir, who is a member of House of Lords, despite all his, I think he was castigated. There were serious allegations against him. And I think so we have people from Mirpuri diaspora. That's the only thing. There's nothing very great about them. But I was trying to explain why Mirpuri diaspora is in such a large number in UK. Not and since they are in numbers, they matter, because that's one area. I think in UK, I think their number is probably much more than what people from other parts of Kashmir are there. That's what.
So Alokji, you mentioned about the lack of any proactive steps and a very dampened reaction in the first 50-60 years, and now some steps are being probably taken. So do you see now any proactive steps from the Indian government to connect with JKSC and build or look at it as a think tank for the cultural reoccupation of Mirpur-Muzaffarabad? So what is the current state of affairs and the collaboration between government and JKSC, if any?
So as far as your question is concerned, we need to understand that a country's policies actually also evolve. And India's stance on this particular region has evolved based on India's intrinsic strength. When we were weak relatively in economic terms or military terms, I think the rulers of that time were willing to make compromises. And so much so that, as you know, in Shimla Agreement, we virtually conceded the region. It's only after when Pakistan went back on its part of the agreement that the government has actually woken up and talked. But in last 7-8 years, we have really taken a thing. Now you see the government has officially said that taking back the occupied territory is done. Before that also there have been parliamentary resolutions, but no. But again, as I said, we need to do more. Even today, vast majority of Indian population is totally ignorant about these territories. What is even more important is that a significant chunk of Indian population doesn't even know that the map that we draw has territories which are not under our control, which have been illegally occupied by foreign powers. So I think that realization has to dawn. Then only the anger will build up. Well, people will agree that this map which we make is actually not our thing. We have somebody else is occupying it. That is what is important. I think that factor needs to come. And as I said, the government's policies have waned and waxed depending on their intrinsic strength. Because whether we like it or not, in 60s and 70s, India was fairly vulnerable economically also, and at some times otherwise also. Between 62 and 65, we were in a real bad shape. If you see the history of the Kashmir conflict, you will see that between 62 and 65, we were under immense pressure from the international community, including the West, especially the West, as the United States. And probably that was the reason why the rulers of that time probably felt that they did not have the strength to do things like that. It's only now that we have a resurgent and a strong India that we feel we need to take back what is rightfully belongs to us.
Shreya here, and thank you for the discussion, the second session. Thank you, Alok. So I have two questions. First is, what is the literacy rate in that region, Mirpur-Muzaffarabad, and what is the technology penetration in the region? So with literacy, I think technology can also, push the facts, and we can also push some sort of an agenda into that. So is it, what is the current state of these two aspects?
See, as far as Mirpur-Muzaffarabad is concerned, the literacy rate is fairly high. It's about 76%, which is higher than any other region of any province of Pakistan actually. So to that extent, literacy is very high. The technology penetration is low. In fact, but there are hardly any industries, there's hardly any livelihood avenues. And what is important is that while the literacy at school level is very high, the graduates and postgraduates are very small. In fact, there are only 2.2% of the population which is graduates, whereas literacy rate, according to the latest census, is almost above 90% as far as this Mirpur-Muzaffarabad is concerned. But this is again Pakistani statistics, but I take it that it should be fairly accurate, because if they are talking that the Pakistani provinces are far low, this could be true. That's what I say.
Thank you, Alok. Vijay Rana ji has another question. He asks, is it possible to open up few scholarships in India to Mirpur-Muzaffarabad students?
Well, this has been a persistent demand. In fact, not from Mirpur-Muzaffarabad, but from Gilgit-Baltistan, this was a demand made in 2007. They said that if you actually, we are your citizens, why don't you reserve seats for us in IIT, IIMs? I think the government of India has to take decisions. I actually have been very strongly advocating that we should conduct elections for those areas and fill the people in the assembly, like China used to do, Taiwan used to do for mainland China. We could also have elections for Bhimbar, Kotli, Mirpur, Muzaffarabad. People do online registration and vote online and get some candidate to come, and then you probably elect them, and people who are migrated from that region could also be contesting. That can also be done. But this is for government of India to take up. I have been advocating. Let's see, someday probably government of India may. They have to look at the international repercussions and how the global community will perceive it. I think that's why they are waiting for it. But I think someday, I hope it will get done. That's what I feel.
Two questions that I wanted to ask. Alokji, as always, delectable, wonderful. The first question is, you were talking about the integration of the people along with the, annexation of the land. We have in 1971 annexed some villages in the Tutuk sector of the Leh and Ladakh region. So what has been our experience? Are they, able to, amalgamate or integrate themselves into the local society? And how about their, response to attacks from Pakistan or even helping India? This is the first question. The second is, you were talking about encouraging or reserving some seats for the Kargil people. But we also have the Hurriyat people actually providing some reservation to Kashmiri students in the occupied territories. Do you support that?
See, firstly, as far as the people from Turtuk, Tyagshe, Bordan, these are the villages which were under Pakistani control till 71, which we have managed to liberate. The citizens of these people, the population of this by and large is loyal Indian citizens. They have amalgamated with India. They are very happy. They are participating in day-to-day national activities, and they are very, very closely aligned with, in fact, many of them are supportive of the Indian army. That's how it is. And so that population, we have no problem. That's a region where we have huge, quite peace and tranquility. People are very nice. As far as reservations in Indian educational institutions are concerned, I feel yes, some token reservations for these people is, I think, essential. As far as Hurriyat providing seats in occupied territories and institutions in Pakistan, that's been stopped by the government. Yes, earlier it was there, which was extremely bad to my mind. I think no government should have allowed that, but somehow at some stage we allowed it. To my mind, that was an absolutely wrong thing. I don't support that.
I mean, Makranji has asked a question, can we have a corridor, like we have a Kartarpur corridor, can we have one for Sharda Peeth as well? I think that request has been there for quite some time now.
I had said so, I think, and that's what Jagdish ji has said. I also recommended that, I think, till resolution of this thing, we should have a corridor. In fact, and Sharda Peeth should be rebuilt, because considering its historical and cultural significance, I think Sharda Peeth needs to be reconstructed, and we need to have a corridor. Of course, as you know, there is a big attempt which is being done by Ravindra Pandita ji and all, who have established, they are building up a shrine on the other side of the line of control till that territory comes. So we don't forget what is happening. So in fact, that is building up well. In fact, not only that, it's virtually at line of control that this temple is being built now, the new Sharda temple which they are building up. But what is important is that he has been in touch with the Muslim residents of Sharda village who have been performing pujas at some special occasions, etc. So as I said, there are people who that side also realize the significance of Sharda and its Sharda Peeth, and they also want that this Peeth should be reconstructed so that people come. There have also been some NRIs who have gone and done puja there. So we have had a lot of things which have been done. But what is important is that the Kashmiri diaspora all over must make it a point that when you come to India ever, or at least make it a point that once in 5 years, once in 3 years, once in 10 years, you come visit Kheer Bhavani, go to Sharda Peeth, you go to all these places which were your heritage, which are linked with your heritage. That's very, very, very important. And then only I think these places will thrive, because that should be the aim, that if you are coming to India, if you're coming to Delhi, Bombay, Chennai, Bangalore, anywhere, you make it a point that you go to Kheer Bhavani, you go to Sharda Peeth, you go and see all these places. And that would make a difference. I think that is what is required.